This video was created for educational purposes only.
It was January the 20th of 2009, when Katrina zunafaya had just returned home from a long day at work to find her two roommates sitting around eating some stew that they offered to Katrina. She accepted the offer and began to eat her bowl of stew. But what Katrina didn't know was that the stew had an exotic type of meat. It wasn't something you can just go and pick up from your local grocery store. No, this meat was cut fresh from the source the night before. And that source happened to be a young woman by the name of Karina Buduchyan. But before we go any further, let's go over how we got to this point. So, buckle up guys, 'cause you're in for a hell of a ride. Karina Buduchyan was a 16-year-old woman from St. Petersburg, Russia. She was raised by her single mother and loved the theater and the performing arts, with dreams of moving to America and becoming an actress someday. She also enjoyed writing and poetry. And she even liked to write music and was in love with heavy metal rock. As a young teen, she enjoyed going to concerts and shows and also started doing her own gigs. One day, when she was at the young age of 15, at one of her music gigs, she would meet a 19-year-old man by the name of Maxim Golovichik, who she would quickly fall in love with. But Maxim was already in a relationship and he didn't have the same feelings for Karina as she did, so they remained friends. As their friendship grew, they would hang out a lot and attend concerts. At the time, Karina's mother didn't approve of the friendship. She thought Maxim was way too old, and he would take advantage of Karina's feelings for him. The 19th of January of 2009 was an ordinary day just as any for Karina. She attended school, then went over to a friend's house after to catch up on some studying. As the day turned into night, Karina would make a phone call to her mother to ask permission to spend the night. Her mother gave her the okay as long as she made it home the following morning by 7 a.m. Karina agreed, and that was the end of the conversation. But what Karina's mother didn't realize is that would be the last time she would ever speak to her 16-year-old daughter. Because when Karina's mom woke up the next morning, she didn't find Karina back home in her room like she was supposed to be. She called her phone, but it went straight to voicemail. After failing to reach her on her own phone line, she immediately called the friend she was supposed to have slept at, but the friend informed her that Karina went to go meet a friend after they finished their homework, and she last seen her at the train station. After that she would go to the police station and report her daughter as missing. And due to Karina being a minor, at the age of 16, the police would start investigating her disappearance immediately. For the first couple of weeks, police would turn up nothing. Handing out and hanging flyers, driving around aimlessly searching, and asking random people on the streets if they had seen the young lady, but no one said they had. One day, searching for clues, Karina's mother would find her daughter's diary. And in that diary would be a lot of love poems written for a guy by the name of Maxim. Once Karina's mom found the poems, she immediately called the police to give them the lead, but they wouldn't follow up on it at the time. But sadly, authorities would discover the dismembered remains of a woman that had been thrown in a dumpster like a piece of trash. The remains were not immediately identified. But soon enough forensics would confirm the identity of the remains as Karina. The coroner would state the cause of death to be drowning. The coroner's report would also state that the body was dismembered with precision. That the killer was probably a butcher or possibly even a surgeon. The crime stunned not only police, but the entire community. The crime had been so brutal and so violent that the detectives working the case knew they had to find the culprit fast, before they could commit another gruesome crime. The investigation continued. And not long after, detectives would catch a big break. A break that would break the case wide open. Because they would receive a phone call from a woman named Katrina. Katrina would tell police that on the night of January the 19th of 2009, Karina had been at her house. She told police that on the night of the 19th that her roommates threw a bit of a get-together. The get-together consisted of herself, her roommate Maxim, one of Maxim's friends named Yuri, and 3 other friends that were not named in any report, and they were said to have left the residence before Karina was killed. Katrina said it had started as just a normal get-together as the friends were all having a good time drinking and listening to their favorite music. Katrina would go on to say that at some point in the night, that Maxim would make a phone call. And that call would be to no other than Karina. Maxim would invite Karina over to the house. After ending his phone call, Maxim would yell over to his friend Yuri, making the bone-chilling statement, "The meat is on the way." Katrina would say that about 20 to 30 minutes later that Karina would show up to the party. Katrina said that the party would go on for about another hour or so before Maxim would ask the 3 unnamed friends to leave, stating that he wanted to have some alone time with Karina. So the friends all agreed and said their farewells and left the residence, leaving just Katrina, Yuri, Maxim, and Karina to their own devices. Maxim would also ask Katrina if it was okay if him and Karina could have some privacy. Katrina, not thinking anything was off with the request, obliged. Knowing she had to get up early for work the next morning anyway, she went ahead and gone to bed. So Maxim, knowing the feelings of deep love Karina possessed for him, took advantage of the situation. That's when Maxim told Karina that he wanted to get intimate with her and asked her if she would like to take a bath with him. Without hesitation, Karina excitedly said yes. Katrina then told police, "That's when I went to bed." While Katrina was in her bed trying to fall asleep, she began hearing some splashing around and some other small noises that piqued her curiosity. So she said, "I got out of bed and started down the hall to the bathroom to make sure everything was okay, but Yuri stopped me and told me to go back to bed, so I did." Karina would innocently think that Maxim just finally reciprocated the love that she has always had for him, and that there was nothing sinister going on at all. She couldn't see the horrors that awaited her in that dreadful bathroom. She just thought things were finally going her way, believing she was completely safe, and she was finally going to get to spend the night in the arms of the man she had been crushing on. Wishful thinking, right? Because that would not be the case, at all. Love and romance couldn't have been further from the truth. Because the things that were about to take place in that bathroom are almost unspeakable. Because what nobody had known at the time was that Maxim and Yuri had actually been planning this for some time now. Katrina would also state that earlier that night, before Karina had even gotten the phone call to come over, that Maxim and Yuri had been joking around when Maxim made the chilling statement that they could just kill Karina if they wanted, and no one would miss her. But of course Katrina never for a second thought that they were serious by any means. She never thought that her roommate and friend could ever commit such a heartless act. She never for a second thought that they were capable of such cruelty. But she was wrong. They were, and they did. It never crossed her mind that she's been sharing a home with a homicidal narcissist. Maxim and Yuri had planned the crime out beforehand, and the horrific and heartless acts committed went as followed. After Maxim and Karina entered the bathroom, they both stripped out of their clothes and got into the tub full of water. While in the tub, Maxim positioned himself in a way that secured Karina's legs underneath his body. After he was positioned properly, it was time for him to give Yuri the signal. The signal was Maxim sneezing 3 times consecutively. After the signal was given, Yuri busted into the bathroom and violently grabbed Karina by the head while plunging her face under the water. Karina would put up a struggle, but was obviously no match for the 2 men that caught her off guard. After drowning the young lady, they began the dismemberment process. Maxim had worked as a butcher for some time and dismembered the body with great precision. He filleted her body like an animal and carefully portioned the parts they were going to keep and eat while bagging and storing the extra meat in the freezer. He also harvested her organs and put them in separate containers, and also stored them in the freezer, to be sold later on the black market. And any parts that weren't good for eating, or worth keeping to sell on the black market, like her head, were then discarded into trash bags to later be dumped somewhere in St. Petersburg. After they portioned out the meat and stored the rest, they grabbed a large pot and filled it with the meat they cut from the poor girl's body along with some potatoes, onions, and other varieties of vegetables. After they had mixed all of the contents of the pot, they put the pot on the stove top and began to cook it. While their flesh stew was cooking on the stove, they went ahead and began to clean up the scene. They cleaned the bathroom spotless to cover all of their tracks. And if anyone would ask where Karina was, they would simply tell them she had left during the night. The next day Katrina would return home from work to find Maxim and Yuri sitting on the couch enjoying their stew. They would then offer some to Katrina, and not knowing anything of the events that took place while she was asleep in bed, she accepted the offer and ate a whole bowl of the human-tainted stew. At first they were trying to pin the blame on one another. But after detectives pressed a little harder, they both caved and gave up the real story on what happened that fateful night. But the most shocking part of it all was the motive behind the heinous crime. They would go on to tell investigators that the reason they killed Karina was because they were hungry and there had not been nothing else to eat in the house. Like really though, you committed such a heinous act because you were hungry? That excuse is so twisted and disturbing. What kind of person kills their friend to eat them? There has to be something really wrong with a person mentally for them to commit such an act of heartlessness. And not to mention it's just downright disgusting. Police would search the house and find some of Karina's organs in Maxim's refrigerator, putting the nail in the coffin. Karina's mother wouldn't find out about the manner of her daughter's death from investigators. Oh no, the poor mother happened to be watching a news broadcast when a story came across the screen about her daughter's case. It was about how authorities apprehended the suspects and that they confessed to the gruesome act of violence. I couldn't imagine how she must have felt in that moment. The complete horror of what those two did to that helpless child is truly disgusting. After hearing this case, I now know that the truth is, monsters really do exist. During the trial, neither Yuri or Maxim displayed any kind of remorse or showed any type of emotion. They remained silent and straight-faced, almost as if they were in a trance or if they had no emotional connection to the world around them. At the end of the trial, both men were given a chance at final words. Maxim would deny his final words, stating that he was not ready. And Yuri would go on to ask the judge for leniency and also stated that he was a kind person with a good heart. The judge would obviously deny his request. Both men were found guilty of their crimes and ultimately sentenced to 19 years and 18 years in prison. They were also mandated to serve their time in the worst of the worst, a place called the Colony. The Colony was well known for its violence and poor living conditions. It was said that the guards would regularly beat and torture the inmates, and that the inmates were forced to do hard labor and have to endure cruel and harsh fitness routines. Then, in early March of 2017, information leaked to the media that Maxim was found dead in his cell. Only 8 years into his sentence he hung himself. And I know what you're all thinking, that he did it due to the treatment by the guards. But that would be incorrect. Because any time his family came to see him or speak with him, he actually informed them that the guards were fairly nice to him. He's actually never once told anyone that the guards treated him in a bad manner. Also, he would leave a note that would be found in his cell next to where he committed the act. It read as follows: "I have finished my life in this body. The time has come for me to go away, in order to be born as a new person." But the issue with that is, his family stated that he never talked about doing such a thing, nor did he ever show any signs that he would. Also at the time he had been waiting on a decision that was being made to review his case and believed that he would soon be a free man. But, what do you think happened to him? Do you think it was self-inflicted, or do you think the guards were responsible? But more importantly, what do you think about this case on behalf of Karina? Do you think her mother's heart will ever heal from a tragedy like this? And what would you have done after finding out your evil roommates killed someone in your bathroom, then secretly fed them to you as a bowl of soup? Well, let us know in the comments below. And that's all I have for this one, guys, so until the next one. Case closed.